if I'm tempted to cheat a client or a business partner out of money because the financial gain right now today is something that I want or need, I'm much more likely to do that versus thinking about how this will impact this person's family over the next 5 years. When you're tempted to do the wrong thing, extend your time frame out. And the longer you make that time frame, I believe the more likely you are to make better decisions. Kipp, what's up, man? Looks like you're in a new location. You are still in the Hawaiian Islands. I mean, we went hunting and I left, but you just decided to stick around for another month or so, it sounds like.
Yeah. I'm like, it's too beautiful, have to stay. Although, I don't know. Actually, Molokai is beautiful. Don't you think?
Crickets. Parts of it are beautiful. No, Molokai is great. It's different than what you would think, at least where we hunt. It's different than what you would think of the traditional quintessential Hawaiian pictures that we see. There are parts of the island that are that, but where we hunt, quite honestly, it just looks like Africa to me.
Yeah, barren Africa. But there is some beauty to it. But yeah, I wanted some of the green stuff, so I hopped on over to Oahu for a little while to make up for it.
Yeah. I went, I did some spot and stock stuff with Eric Chesser. And if you guys don't know who Eric Chesser is, he's a great person, but he runs a company called Hush, and he's an incredible hunter. And so I said, hey, I want to go hunt with you because I want to learn from you.
Yeah,
and we went and hiked all up in the mountains and everything else. And he got me into a deer, and I had a really cool stock. I didn't end up shooting the deer. I missed I think it was just under her, but just that experience. And there was a place kind of in a bowl that was all barren and desert and red, but it had these huge boulder lava rocks, and we call it Mars. And walking around there was so strange, but it is. When you get up in the mountains and you see all the landscape and you see the different type of landscape, it's pretty amazing. And I actually think that's one of the best things about hunting and just being outside is what you get to experience and see and new views, and it's pretty incredible. I think more men should do that. Just get outside, whether you're hunting or not.
Yeah, it was great. Eric's is a stud. Even on that same canyon where those cuts are down the end, I was thinking that when I was cutting down through there, I was like, man, this is another part of Hawaii or Molokai that I haven't seen. It's just so wild, how it's all set up. But
so you got it done, man. You're 3 for 3 on your hunts.
3 for 3.
Which is, as a bow hunter, that's phenomenal. So last year about this time, you got an axis deer in Hawaii. Then in Minnesota in the fall, you got a whitetail. And then this year, you got another axis deer. I did not have the level of success that you're having. But I will say,
you get 2 this year, didn't you?
I mean, when I started. I started hunting.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I did fairly well. I have done fairly well this year so far. But yeah, it's interesting because I think it'd be easy for people to discount success, but I just want to pay you a compliment because I see the work that you put in, not only in hunting, but other aspects of your life. And it's not a surprise to me that the way you're disciplined with work and your family life and jiu-jitsu translates perfectly into hunting. I know you've trained, I know you're taking shots. I see how serious you take it, the nuance of it. I see how open-minded you are to learning or hearing new ideas. And it's not a surprise to me that you have the success that you do in something that is actually really, really difficult to do, which is hunting in general, but then to shoot animals with a string and a stick is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because it does feel that way sometimes. I'm like, dude, totally. Seriously, I like arrow, rock to the head. Yeah, probably about the same closeness,
Yeah. Have you seen that meme? It's a cartoon. It's these two ancient, warriors, and one of them says to the other, I really want to stab that person, but he's way over there. And it says on the bottom how archery was created.
That's hilarious. I loved Woody's shirt, man. It was super funny.
A Molokai fast food.
Yeah, it's so hilarious. It has a
Yeah.
picture of a axis deer, and it's all Molokai fast food. I'm like, yeah, it's straight up,
Yeah.
100% accurate. Yeah, it is really fast food.
Well, we had a good time, and it leads me into something I wanted to share, which is the importance of having good men in your corner. I was thinking as we were out hunting with each other, or even just coming back and sharing stories of what went well, what didn't go well, sharing stories not only about the hunt, but about life and relationships that we have and things that are going well and businesses that we're running and new ideas and insights. And every time I turned around, there was a new conversation between us about things that are relevant to all of us. Of course, yeah, we were Jack and John giving each other a hard time. Sure, that builds camaraderie and connection. But I know that not enough men have this type of brotherhood. They don't have men they can rely on. They don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of. There's no accountability for these guys. There's no connection, and it's really isolating and lonely for a lot of men. And the statistics bear that. When you look at depression rates and suicide rates, and the amount of men that actually even have one friend they could call in hardship is abysmal. So I bring that up because we have our brotherhood, the Iron Council. And what's interesting is a lot of the connections, well, you and I wouldn't be connected without the Iron Council. No. Logan Ingram was out there with us. We wouldn't be connected without the Iron Council. Eric, Chesser, and Ben, those guys wouldn't be connected without Order of Man. So it's really interesting that we've created this band of brothers through the Iron Council, but I take just as much advantage of it as everybody else. Like I get to meet people and hunt with them and learn from them and break bread with them. So if you guys are looking for connection with other men who care about you, who want you to succeed, who want you to win, then I would highly suggest you look at it. We're open for another week until the end of this month. So go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And I'm sure throughout the conversation today, we'll talk a little bit more about it through the answers to the questions that we're receiving today.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's hop into this question from Mike Andolfer. He says, it is said that change only occurs through two motives, desperation and inspiration. Where has this occurred in your lives, and how do you progress from the former, which seems reactionary, to the latter, which is proactive?
Yeah, I mean, one question I get quite often is, can a man change without hitting rock bottom? And the answer is yes, you can.
Yeah.
And also, what does rock bottom even mean? I think we've talked about this in the past, Kip. Rock bottom is the minute you stop digging. So if you're dealing with addiction, if you're struggling in your romantic relationship, if you're making bad financial decisions, you're struggling in other relationships that you have in life, the first step is to stop doing dumb things.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes it's not as blatantly obvious. You know, if you're addicted to pornography or alcohol or drug use or whatever, it might be more obvious to you. But there's also little things that we could be doing that are self-sabotaging that maybe we don't even acknowledge and recognize. And that is part of the reason why you need to have men in your corner who are objective. So you might come to me, Kip, and say, hey, man, I'm dealing with this thing. My wife and I are struggling, for example. Well, I can see that fairly objectively because I'm not necessarily attached the same way that you are to the outcome of your choices. So I can speak into you different than you can even be capable of acknowledging yourself. So you don't have to be desperate to change. You just have to decide that you're going to change. You have to decide to be different, to make different choices, and then achieve the different results. The inspiration part, I like that. I would maybe change that with the word hope, because if you're just desperate, yeah, you might feel like you want to make a change, but if you don't feel like that change is going to actually make a better life for you, then you're probably not going to be inspired to do it, and you probably won't do it for long, even if you do. So there has to be an element of hope involved in the change-making process, meaning that if I do this, I have hope that the outcome will be different. So I do agree with that. I think desperation, or at least pain and hope, are the two elements that are required. This showed up for me in the breakdown of my previous marriage. You know, at that time I was drinking heavily. I was really struggling with all of that. And in part, it led to the breakdown of my marriage. So that was a desperate time. There was a lot of pain, a lot of mental and emotional pain around that. And it was the hope of changing that maybe I could salvage my marriage. Now I didn't. It was too little too late. But I knew that if I kept going down that path, I would reinvigorate the relationship I had with my children. I'd be more focused with work. There would be other relationships that I would be in, and I have been in, that because of that change put me in a better position for it. So I agree. I think pain and hope are the two elements, and that's one area that has really impacted me.
Yeah. You know, I really love how you opened up that response with this idea of like, what is desperation, right? And you use the analogy of a stop digging. You know, it's really interesting how many areas of our life where you can move yourself to the space of desperation and inspiration by just being really present to your current circumstance, right? Like you don't have to wait for the third party to say, I'm done with you. You can actually just get present to how you're showing up, and that what's at risk is those relationships if you don't make a change. That's the proactive kind of generation of desperation, if you want to use that term, by just being present. All of us are leaving impact in all of our relationships right now, whether positive or negative. And I really feel like if we get present to how we're showing up and how it's impacting those that we care about, you would probably move to action. Mm-hmm. In fact, if I even saying this, I know that I'm not fully present to that. And if I was, I'd probably move to action way more than I am today. And that tells me that we can be proactive in this. It just requires us to be fully aware how we're showing up and how it affects those around us.
The word I use for that, Kipp, is vigilance. Like, we need to remain so vigilant towards what's going on in relationships or our business. You need to be aware. You need to review those things frequently and often so that you can see the slightest little deviation in what's happening. Yeah. Because some of those things are so small and minute that it doesn't feel like a big deal. But when you stack that up over time, it's like eating. You know, you could eat an extra 100 calories per day and be fine for a while, but pretty soon you're going to be 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 pounds overweight if you keep doing that. The 100 calories is not a big deal, but the 100,000 calories is a big deal. And so that's what is challenging about it. I'm reminded of a story that Rick told us on this hunt. He shot a deer and he ended up finding it, but it was still alive, and it bumped, and he bumped it and it ran, and he found it. I think he said he shot it again, and it ran again, and it ran off a cliff. And he was going to follow the deer. Well, he was walking towards the cliff, and there was some bushes, and he parted the bushes, and that's where the deer ran. The deer was so desperate, it jumped off this cliff. I don't even know if it saw it in time. And Rick said if he wasn't paying attention, then he would have fell off the cliff too. And that's what's happening in our lives. These little things are happening on a daily basis that we're just not conscious of. We're not spending any time thinking about it. We don't have a process of review, and we don't have objective people in our lives who are helping us see where we might be falling short. And we're heading towards the cliff, and it's covered by bushes, and we don't even know that we're marching towards our impending death. That's why vigilance is so crucial, because it will happen. Whether or not you're blinded to it or eyes wide open, it's going to happen if we're making bad decisions in our lives.
Totally. And by the way, full disclosure, that's probably the only story of inspiration that we could have gotten from Rick out of the entire weekend. In fact, when you said Rick shared a story, I was going to interrupt you and say, I don't think you could share any of them online in a recording.
So, all right, what's next, man?
Rick's got one good one in him. All right, Christopher Kroom. A lot of men have friends, some circles of influence that they spend time around. When it comes to developing business, molding your leadership group is a serious business because it's some blend of friendships and advisors. You need trust, intellect, and integrity. But beyond that, in both realms, there can be an inner circle developed, more than an advisor, closer than acquaintances or friends. It's really an extension of yourself in many ways. What's your criteria for identifying good men that make for a function and a well-equipped inner circle, and how would you define the concept of and go about developing one?
Well, I think some of that happens somewhat organically. That's just going to happen over time. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be deliberate and intentional about it, because even a lot of things will grow organically. I mean, you could have, you could put, I remember in high school in science class, we would put some sort of bacteria in a little culture and it grows organically, but it doesn't mean it's healthy, right? Like it could kill you. So it's the same thing with your circle of friends. That's going to grow organically. You're going to meet guys in high school. You're going to go on hunts and other people are going to be invited. You're going to have neighbors. You're going to have people that you work with. All of that is going to be somewhat organic. You need to ask yourself, is this, even though it's organic, is this good? Is this serving me? And be as deliberate as you possibly can about it. And then find a way to put yourself in proximity or spend more time with the people who meet the criteria. So when I go on a hunt, for example, I'm handpicking people that I want to go with. I don't usually, unless it's an actual event, I don't usually just throw it out there and see who wants to go. I make individual and specific phone calls because those are the people I want to spend more time with. So being deliberate is important. But as far as the criteria goes, I think consistency is one. Humility is definitely one. Also competency. I want to make sure that this is a competent person that I can actually learn from. If they don't have any value to add to my life, why would I want them in that circle? So consistency, competency, humility, also a willingness to engage and be honest. Because a lot of people won't do that. I guess I would say that's courage. A lot of people aren't courageous enough. They can acknowledge what's going on. They can see that things need to be addressed and said, but they don't have the balls to say it. And I need people in my life who are unafraid to say what needs to be said or do what needs to be done. And there's ways. Sorry, I'm congested. There's a huge fire in southern Utah, and it's like really smoky, so it's getting to me. Yeah, there's things that you can do. I was thinking about this just the other day. You know what? One of the reasons why jiu-jitsu is so great is because when you go train with somebody, you're going to find out really quickly if that's a person who will bitch out when things get hard. And to me, that is crucial because I need to know that in discomfort, even if you're getting your ass handed to you, is this a man who can stay in the fight? Is this a man who won't bail or won't tuck tail? And is this a man who will actually come back tomorrow to do it again? And I think that's what's so important for men to realize when it comes to building up your band of brothers is you have to do hard things together. It's a litmus test. So if it's jiu-jitsu, if it's a Spartan race, if it's training for a marathon together or an Ironman or a camp out, you have to do something in the physical realm because that physicality and the tiredness of it reveals who that man really is. And Kipp, I know that you've seen people come and go in jiu-jitsu who are emotionally unhinged. That's not a guy you want. If he's emotionally unhinged at jiu-jitsu, you don't want him in your circle. I've seen guys who come and they get their butts handed to them and they have no level of humility, so they don't come back because they can't stand the thought that they're not good enough at something, even though they're brand new. That's not a guy I want in my circle. So I love to create environments of hardship, physical hardship, because it helps me separate the winners from the losers. And I can say, that guy, if I knew nothing else about him, I know he's humble, I know he's courageous, I know he's consistent, and I know he keeps coming back for more, even if things aren't great. And that's a guy I would be more interested in having in my circle than the alternative.
Dude, it's so true. Christopher in his question asked, part of it was around the business side of things. And I find this interesting because in the business world, let's say you're building your inner circle, but you have the stick, right? As the owner of the company, you own the stick that almost for some people might dictate their way of life quite a bit, right? You and I get sideways. If I'm your full-time employer, you and I get sideways, I get fired, right? Like that's a lot at risk, right?
Yeah.
And so what are your thoughts for Christopher around this idea of how you need to be showing up as a leader, that your people, even though you own the stick, are willing to be courageous with you, right? Because I do feel like I think that's one of the biggest issues with leaders today is they don't realize that their authority almost kind of somewhat hurts them, right? Their effectiveness. People may not be honest with you. Even if you tout, oh, don't be honest with me, everyone, I'm an open book. A lot of people won't, not when their job's on the line, right? Or if they feel like their job's on the line. So what additional things would you add for Christopher around that dynamic?
So as you were saying that, I was writing things down. You could probably hear me punching away on the keyboard, but here's some things I wrote down and we could break a few of these down. So number one, the ability to clearly communicate expectations. People don't want uncertainty in their lives. Your wife doesn't want uncertainty. Your kids don't want uncertainty. Your employees don't want uncertainty. That creates bad loops in the nervous system and underperformance because everybody's always on edge. Like, how's Ryan going to act? How's he going to respond? What does he even want of us? I was talking to my two boys yesterday. They just got a job lined up for the summer, but their employer and their trainer weren't real clear about their instructions on what they needed to do. And so that created frustration in my boys, rightfully so. They were frustrated. I would be too, because there was uncertainty and it was unclear. So expectations, number one. But I also think having compassion and empathy for the people on your team is crucial. You don't want to get too close. I think he kind of alluded to this a little bit in the first part of his question. But yeah, you don't want to get too close to your people in a business setting because that strips away some of your authority. The Dichotomy of Leadership by Jocko Willink talks a little bit about this, so that you can read more on that. Humility is another important thing, that if somebody comes to you and says, hey, like this is feedback I want to give you, are you humble enough to receive it? Now, there's a proper way to do it, and then there's an improper way to do it. So, Kipp, if you are my employee and you want to give me feedback, then I need to be willing to give you feedback on how you communicate that with me. And that might be done up front. So if you're a new hire, I might say to you, hey, as a member of this team, you have the right to give me feedback, but here's how you communicate that feedback with me. And then that way, if you do it correctly, I can say, hey, Kipp, thank you. You followed the process. Thank you for the feedback. I also appreciate the way that you gave that to me. Or if you step out of line, I can say, hey, look, two things. Separate. I appreciate the feedback. And remember when we talked about how you are to give feedback, I want to make sure we keep it that way. So we keep a productive environment. But humility is important. Also, results. Are you a leader who can create results? Because if you can't create results, nobody's going to follow you. And it has to be consistent results. If you create consistent results over time, your people are going to question you less. They might have questions, but they're going to question you less because they might even say, you know what? I don't always understand the methods, but Ryan gets it done. Business is growing, revenues are up, he's sharing profits with us, we're making money, we're fulfilled, we're happy, we're satisfied, and so we're fully on board with this. And the last thing, this is really important. How you respond is crucial. Men need to work on emotional regulation. That doesn't mean that we need to suppress our emotions, that we need to bury them and stuff them and never discuss them. Sometimes, maybe, but not always. It means that you need to be able to regulate your emotions because, again, you want to create certainty in the lives of the people that you care about. So, Kipp, if you're going to come to me with feedback, or maybe the project worked or didn't work, and I blow a gasket, are you less or more likely to come talk to me about something in the future? Of course, you're less likely to talk with me because you don't know what version you're going to get. it's almost better for you to always be an asshole than it is for you to sometimes be an asshole and sometimes be amazing. Because at least always being an asshole, you can arm yourself when you go in. You're like, I know Ryan's going to be a dick about this. He always is. That's certainty. Not great. I'm not saying that, but at least there's certainty in it. It's the devil, right? That's why women, for example, will stay in abusive relationships, because the certainty of being with that man is better than the uncertainty of going out on her own and facing life without financial provision, or the scrutiny she might get, or the fear that she might be dealing with. So make sure that you remain consistent in your response, and ideally it's emotionally regulated, that you don't allow your emotions to take over and you don't react emotionally. You use your emotion as feedback for what you're experiencing, and then you communicate and articulate clearly with your people.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll give you an example, actually, if I can, real quick on that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yesterday, my two oldest boys were frustrated. This is in a personal setting, and I was really getting after my second son a little bit because he wasn't doing what he was asked to do. And I could tell that he was getting very frustrated, and I was about to head to the gym yesterday afternoon, and I was driving down the road, and I didn't raise my voice. It wasn't overly bad. I was just getting after him. I was on top of him to get it done, and he was frustrated about it. And I was good with the way I handled it. I didn't think it was inappropriate the way I handled the situation. But I was driving down the road and I turned around. I'm like, you know what? Everybody's on edge. The two older boys are on edge. They're frustrated. I'm getting after him. He's clearly upset about this. And I stopped. I did not go to the gym. I came back and I said, hey guys, I went inside. Both the boys, the two oldest boys said, man, that was fast. I said, yeah, I changed my mind. I said, get your stuff. Let's go. We're going to go get ice cream. And that's what we did. So I could have very easily just went to the gym and it would have been fine. But instead I hope that I saw what the moment demanded of me, what it required of me. And I pivoted and changed courses as quickly as I could. Now, when we got ice cream, I didn't bring up anything. I didn't talk about anything. I didn't apologize. I didn't even have anything to apologize about. I didn't re-agitate the situation. We just all went and got ice cream, had a good time. By the time we got back, everybody's smiling, laughing, having fun, joking with each other. Emotional regulation. You need to regulate it for yourself, but you also need to acknowledge when your people need to be regulated and figure out ways to address it appropriately.
That really brings up another thought for Cole, not Cole. Who are we talking to here? Christopher. Is the importance of influence. This was years ago when the battle team mentors within the Iron Council kind of reported to me, if you want to use that term. And I remember I was taking a coaching call with one of the mentors, and he calls me up and says, hey, Kipp, I'm having this problem with one of our battle team leaders. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? And he's like, well, I asked him to get these surveys and these things in, and his response to me is like, yeah, if I get time. And he's constantly just like combative. Everything I ask him to do, he pushes back. And he's kind of like a dick, like openly, disagreeing constantly, and I don't know how to deal with it. And I said, are you in a position of influence with him? And he goes, yeah, I do these calls like at least a couple times a month. I give him coaching and, what he needs to improve on. And I ask how his team's doing. And I'm like, how's his wife? Oh, I don't know. How's his kids? I don't know that either. How's his job? I don't know. I'm like, dude, you don't have influence, right? If we don't know that the person cares about us, then why are you coaching me? Oh, for your benefit. Oh, because you're trying to make money. Because you're trying to prop yourself up. It's all the other intentions other than the intention of what? Helping me, serving me, coaching me. Oh, it's about you. And if we're not in a position of influence, people will assume that your intent is one of those latter things, right? So be in a position of influence. People need to know where you stand with them, how you see them, and there's a level of relationship. And what I find fascinating about this, Ryan, and maybe this was like a aha or not a aha for you with your military background, but whenever I've heard the chain of command over the years, I always thought it was like control, right? It's about authority and control. Who's in a position of authority and control? And I thought that's all that it was. And even so much that it kind of had a bad taste in my mouth a little bit, right? When I hear that term chain of command, I was like, oh, that's just controls. I don't like it. Now I realize it's not. Now it is that, right? Because we have to identify who's responsible and where does responsibility, sit and where does ownership lie. But it's also who's in the position to influence. And that's the chain of command. Those are the individuals that should be coaching certain individuals. Why? Because they're the ones in the position of influence, not 4 layers up in the org. So just another thought for Christopher as we talk about that, identifying that circle.
Yeah. Well, not only influence, but also authority. The chain of command is working through people who can actually get things done.
Yeah.
If you go outside of the chain of command to somebody you like, but they don't have the ability to get anything done, that's not going to fix anything. So, yeah. And it's also for clarity's sake, too. Just so everybody's clear about where to go, how to work together. It's powerful. And you should have the same thing in a family dynamic, too. It's like, yeah, you are the ultimate chain of command, but you should be able to say, hey, if you and your siblings are having an issue, you guys work it out. If you can't work it out, then bring it to me. And I'm going to talk with your mom about it. And everybody's clear about the process of how this works. That just creates so much more certainty, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
There's no guesswork.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Cole Hammelrick, does the thought of eternity ever affect your day-to-day life? And how do you deal with it? Whether or not that's an internal nothing or an internal something?
The way he's framing that a little bit doesn't really it sounds more like like he's saying, bringing it from a negative perspective, like, oh, the thought of eternity is that.
How do you deal with it? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing. I mean, I believe in eternity. I believe that there's life after death, and that as Marcus, or was it Marcus or Maximus, I think on Gladiator says, what we do echoes in eternity. And I believe that's true. This to me is somewhat of a test, our earthly existence. It's it's an opportunity to learn and grow and be tested and show that we are capable of doing great things and horrible things. And can we overcome our natural desire and inclination to lie and cheat and steal and be manipulative and take advantage of other people and create violent, unnecessary or unrighteous violence? Like, all of us have that in us. I call it the natural man. He's lazy, he's weak, he's immediate gratification. He wants the results without the effort. He'll do whatever he can to get it at the expense of other people. We need to fight that man daily. And so, because we've been commanded to do that. So that's the eternal perspective. So I don't look at it as a bad thing. 2 ways that I tend to look at it, that I choose to look at it, is that this is only part of my existence, this life, this physical life. And the concept of memento mori, remember that you will die, is part of that we only have so long, so we better make the most of it. You better go hunting with your friends. You better play big and start that business you've always wanted to start. You better ask that woman on a date. You better ask for her hand in marriage. You better pour into your children. You better take care of yourself physically, because we get one shot for all of this, and then it's gone. There's other things that I think are greater than this in eternity, but this is what we have right now. The other thing when it comes to focusing on eternity that it does for me is that the longer I extend my time horizon, the better choices I make. Forever, like for everything. If it comes to fitness, if my decision on whether or not to lift is based on how I feel currently in the moment, I'm probably not going to go lift. But if it's based on what I want to look like for the next year or 5 or 10 years, or how I want to be fully present with my kids as they're growing up, or how I want to be able to hold my grandchildren and play with them and still be in good physical shape to be able to deal with that, I'll probably go to the gym today. if I'm tempted to cheat a client or a business partner out of money because the financial gain right now today is something that I want or need, I'm much more likely to do that versus thinking about how this will impact this person's family over the next 5 years or how it will affect my own salvation in eternity. And I'm less likely to make those poor decisions. So for me, when you're tempted to do the wrong thing, extend your time frame out. And the longer you make that time frame, I believe the more likely you are to make better decisions.
I love it, man. How'd you deal with it? I mean, obviously that's in the negative sense.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, he's saying it that way, but it has some of that negative connotation with it.
I mean, so how do you get, obviously we're leaning in the positive direction, right? How do you stay present to it? Like what are you doing that you don't lose sight, right? That the how you're feeling today trumps, the physical goals that you have to go into the gym. How do you keep the eternal perspective?
Well, for me, there's a a mantra that I use that I'm a son of God. I'm divine, and so are you. And if you are a son of God, like I believe that you are, then you have a moral responsibility to do the right thing. And by the way, it seems like we always talk about doing the right thing as some sort of great sacrifice. Have you noticed that? Like, every time somebody's, and I've done that, like every time somebody says, oh, just do the right thing, it's going to be hard. It's like, well, hold on a second. We're putting a negative. Yeah, it does. It always makes things easier. Maybe not momentarily. You know, if I could cheat you out of something and steal $10,000 from you, that's better today, currently.
Yeah.
But what does that do to my own soul and psyche? What does that do to the way that I show up? What does that do to my level of confidence? What does that do to foster other business partnerships if you're out there telling people how I scammed you?
Yeah.
Like, it's worse.
And I would say there is an immediate effect, right? Like, maybe the deposit of the bank account looks positive, but you don't think that weighs us? Oh man, there's so much weight. It's so much energy wasted constantly when we're out of integrity. It's miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is a mantra that I use is I'm a son of God, and so I should act like it.
Yeah.
As the phrase goes, what would Jesus do? What would he do? And then that's a pretty good metric on how you can live your life. The other thing that helps me is I'm very aware of my purpose on this earth. I'm very aware of it. I'm very connected to it. And it's not to make a bunch of money. It's not to have nice things. I want to make lots of money. I want to have nice things, but that's not my purpose. My purpose is to become the best man that I can be and help other people on their mission to do the same. That is my singular purpose of being on this earth. Now, I can do that in a lot of different ways. I choose to do it through this movement, Order of Man, and it serves my purpose. But if Order of Man was ripped away for some reason in some way from me tomorrow, that would still be my purpose. To become the best man I can be and to help other men and women become the best versions of themselves. That would still be my purpose. Whether I'm a school teacher or running Order of Man or working at a fast food restaurant or picking up garbage, a garbage truck, or driving truck across the country to deliver good, like whatever it is, that is my purpose. And because that's my purpose, I can now use that as a litmus test for the way I show up. Is what I'm doing in this moment serving my purpose? In this moment, I can answer yes, because we're doing this podcast. But if I'm sitting around wasting time or getting drunk or watching pornography or taking advantage of other people, no, that's not serving my purpose. And so I'm reminded daily, what is my purpose? If I'm sitting down with my kids, my son, my youngest son, he just wants to sit by me. He'll draw or watch a show, and I hate the shows he watches. And it's hard at times for me to just sit there. when I feel like I have other things to do, but I can answer that question in the affirmative that yes, in that moment, I am serving my purpose because I'm letting him know he's important. I'm letting him know he's loved. We're connecting. He feels like my presence is there. He feels like he matters, and he does. And so I can measure everything that I do, negatively or positively, against my purpose. And if you don't know what your purpose is, that's the first step. Everything else becomes not easier necessarily, but more clear, way more clear, and you can make better choices.
Love it. All right, Joey Ranieri. As things develop more in the Middle East with our involvement of Israel and Iran, many people may start to have fears that something might happen on the home front, especially men who have families or are creating families in the near future. For those who are experiencing these feelings, what can men do to eliminate such fear in themselves or those around them who they love so they can create a protective and secure environment around them?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's a lot that we could unpackage here. So vigilance is not; these are not in any order, but vigilance is number one, meaning that you need to stay awake. I just heard I haven't been on the socials or following the news very much, but the last week because I've been hunting, which has been nice not to have to tap into this stuff, and I don't even really know all the intricacies of what's going on with Israel and Iran. I think I saw something like there maybe were some U.S. strikes that were made against Iran, which I'm not a fan of. Like I'm much more of not completely, but I'm much more of an isolationist than I am getting involved in all these foreign affairs. Not completely, because I think there are reasons we would need to get involved. But there's some nuance there. Anyways, I haven't been paying attention, but I think that we do need to remain vigilant around us. I heard that there was maybe somebody who drove a truck into a church or something and started shooting up a church. I haven't confirmed that. My oldest son told me about that. I need to look into that. But we do. We see protests and riots and school shootings and mass shooters. Guys, you need to remain vigilant against this stuff. When you go out in public and you're with your woman or you're with your children or even by yourself, how do you get out of the car? Are you looking around? Are you aware? Is your head buried in your phone when you're walking down the street? Like I've seen people run into telephone poles because their head's buried in their phones and they're not even paying attention. They're literally running into things because they're that unaware of what's going on around them. Don't you think you're an easy target? Your job is to protect yourself and protect other people. And so if your wife is with you, she better be walking on the inside of the street, the sidewalk. And your head better be out of your phone, and you better be looking around, scanning, observing, and being aware. You're not paranoid, but you better be prepared. When you go sit down in a restaurant, you better sit in the right place. Your wife can sit with her back to the door because it's your job to make sure that your face is towards the door. Are you scanning? Do you know where the exits are? Do you know where the bad actors potentially are? Can you see weird behavior? And if you do, are you willing to call it out and point it out, or at least get yourself out of that situation? Do you have a firearm? If it's legal. If it's not legal, you need to work on your elected representatives to make that, to acknowledge the legality of it, because I think it is legal in the country, regardless of what other state laws are trying to usurp the authority of the U.S. Constitution. But you better have a firearm. You better know how to train with it. You better know how to throw a punch. You better know how to take somebody to the ground. You better know how to escape if you're on the ground. These are all things that you need to be aware of. And if you're not, I actually think you could probably mitigate about 90+% of the risk you might face just by being aware. There's a great book called Left to Bang that I would read. I can't remember the author right offhand, but read that. Education is important, so being informed on what's going on and trying to get objective analysis of it without all the political infighting and the emotional reaction and response to some of these things. Just try to get the details and the facts by looking at multiple sources, learning how to communicate effectively, even to your children and your wife. If your wife is walking on the inside of the sidewalk or you're at a restaurant and you ask to sit in the spot where you should be sitting as a man, does she know why you do that? Is she aware of what you're doing? If your head's not buried in your phone, does she know, hey, This is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm aware of. Are you teaching your kids to be aware of what's going on around them? Are they scanning the environment? Are they scanning parking lots? My children will sometimes say to me, Dad, that guy's weird. And most of culture, most like politically correct will say, oh, don't say that. Don't say he's weird. No, if that's a weird guy, I want to know my kids can identify that's a weird guy. And then I ask them, why do you say that? Well, because he's like fidgety and he doesn't really look like he belongs here. They say things. I'm like, yeah, I feel the same way. I'm glad that you recognize it and acknowledge it. I don't make it a thing because that's what I want them to be doing. And then just the skill sets that come with it. And the skill sets are throwing a punch, taking somebody down, getting off the ground, getting yourself into a new environment, being assertive. Like how many times have we seen things, and maybe even I've done this, where we see things that are off and we don't want to make it weird. We don't want to make it uncomfortable. We don't want to inconvenience other people. And so we put ourselves in harm's way because we're not assertive enough and don't have the backbone to say and do something about it. That's a skill set, learning how to communicate effectively, learning how to build assertiveness. So vigilance, education, communication, skill sets.
I love it. Well, and I just want to call this out. Maybe it's a given, but Joey, like he asked this question, right? For those experiencing these feelings, how do you eliminate such fear? You build confidence. That's how. Because, by the way, why? Because all the other stuff's outside your control anyway. So, obviously the thing that you can do is prepare oneself, right? And build up your own confidence and create the environment by which you can have increased safety by how you're showing up as a man.
Well, I agree with what you said there, but I would also say, why do you want to eliminate the fear?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, good point.
Isn't the fear, isn't that what drives you to address it?
Yeah.
You can't be courageous if there's not some level of fear. So there's a really good book by Gavin DeBecker called The Gift of Fear. We as human beings are designed, whether you think designed or whether you think evolved, I think probably a bit of both. We have that beautiful gift of emotion. And when you're afraid, that's a good thing. It means there's a threat. Physical, mental, emotional, spirit, there's a threat. There's something going on. And so why would you want to get away? Why would you want to do away with your warning system, your built-in warning system? You want to feel the fear. Now, you want to be able to respond to it correctly, and that's what we're talking about with vigilance, education, communication, skill sets. But don't run away from the fear, whether it's public speaking or whether it's that weird guy you see in the parking lot or somebody brandishing a firearm. Yeah, that fear is there to serve you. That's a good thing. Make sure you know how to harness it for productive outcomes.
Yeah, good distinction. All right, Tim Conley, relocating my family from Maine to South Carolina this July. As I lead my family through this major move, what practical steps, mindsets would you recommend to stay grounded, lead with strength, and keep my mission clear, especially with the uncertainty starts to weigh in on me?
First of all, don't leave Maine. Just don't leave Maine. Maine's amazing.
Although South Carolina's pretty awesome.
South Carolina is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is from Tim, right? Yeah. I think, Tim, I think one of the things that you need to be aware of, he said his family, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
So it's his wife and his kids. So you said something about certainty, especially in the face of uncertainty. That to me is your primary job, is to address the uncertainty and to take the brunt of it. There's a great quote, and I don't want to paraphrase. I want to give you the right quote. So I'm going to pull it up here. Hold on, bear with me. Okay, here it is. It says this: the real man gains renown by standing between his family and destruction, absorbing the blows of fate with equanimity. That is one of my favorite quotes. Your job as a man is to absorb the blows of fate. And that could be the uncertainty of moving, and you're to do it with equanimity, meaning clarity, calmness, comfort, control. So your wife is going to be afraid of what's going on. There's uncertainty. Your kids are going to feel uncertain because now they're going to be in a new school. Your wife may be moving away from support that she has in Maine, that she's not going to maybe have the same level of support there. And I'm not saying that you need to shelter your wife and kids from this stuff. You should be able to communicate it effectively. There's a lot of things that you can do, but I think the thing that I would have done better when I moved from Utah to Maine is to be aware of the uncertainty that she was feeling and the uncertainty that my kids were feeling. And I would have been more aware and vigilant about calming those fears, understanding what they were concerned with, trying to find ways to support them with the things that they would be missing when they moved away. She's going to be missing support. Your kids are going to be missing friends. There's structure that comes with it. That's your job as a man, is to create clarity, to create structure, and to create certainty. So however you can do that by communicating clearly, but not letting them absorb the blows of fate, that's your job. You handle that. Make sure you're in a good financial position. Make sure you're communicating with your wife and your kids. Make sure you understand what they're dealing with, what they're confronting with, what's hard about it, what isn't hard about it, what they like, what they don't like. What does the house need to look like for them to feel comfortable? What structure or routines do you need to build in to ensure that they have something that's certain that they can rely on in the face of new changes in their lives? Again, it's clarity, it's structure, and it's certainty. That is your job.
Love it. Earlier you mentioned Left to Bang, authors Patrick Van Horn and Jason Riley.
Patrick Van Horn. That's right. Yeah. Patrick has been on the podcast, so yeah.
Yeah, great book. Last question, Peyton Mathis. When it comes to fathers acting on emotion, do you mean in anger or maybe sorrow and sadness? And to what extent of action and reaction? It seems like everyone says your kids, especially your daughters, should never see you cry or get angry. But to me, I feel like you don't want to teach your kids the wrong thing by bottling up everything up.
Yeah, you can be angry. Well, I mean, there's things that your kids are going to do that you can be angry about, like,
thank
or
goodness.
You can be sad. Yeah, like you can be those things. I don't know why we don't think he's not wrong. Like that is a common misconception that we shouldn't be angry, we shouldn't cry, we shouldn't show sorrow. Like, no, you're emotional. It's fine. It's the way you exhibit it. So if your kid does something stupid that impacts the family, maybe they, I don't know, maybe they're playing baseball outside and they threw a baseball through the sliding glass door. Yeah, you can be angry about that. That was dumb. Yeah. They did a dumb thing and you can be angry. Now, do you beat them to a pulp because they do that? No, of course not. That's one way people exhibit their anger. They resort to violence. I'm using that as an extreme example. I hope it goes without saying you wouldn't do that. I don't even know if you would even need to yell at them. I remember when I was a kid, and I don't know why. I do know why I remember this. My sister was somewhere, and my mom and I. It was just my mom and I was really looking forward. I don't know if we were going to watch a movie together or do like snack night or something. I was very excited about it. And she was in the kitchen. She may have been on the phone or cooking dinner. And I was laying on the floor in the living room, and behind me there was a coffee table, and it's a glass top coffee table. And I'm laying on the floor and I'm throwing my baseball up in the air, and I'm trying to see how close I can get my baseball to the ceiling without touching the ceiling. And I would do that when I was a kid a lot. So I'm throwing my baseball, trying to not touch the ceiling, but see how close I can get it. And sure enough, I throw one up, I reach my glove out behind me to catch it, and I miss. And it breaks the glass counter or a coffee table. And I was so upset about it. So upset. And I thought I just ruined this night. Like my mom and I were going to have a good night. We're going to watch a movie, do snacks. And I ruined it because I let the ball go through the coffee table. And she was so gracious. She came in and she looked at me and she's like, "What did you do?" And I told her, and she said, And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to ruin the night. And she looked at me. She's like, ruin the night? What are you talking about? You didn't ruin the night. I mean, you're going to have to work this off and pay for glass to put in this coffee table, but you didn't ruin the night. And I remember we had a great night that night. Now, she was probably angry. She was probably frustrated about it. I would be. But she handled it so graciously. And that's how we need to do that as parents. Your kids are going to do dumb things. You can be angry about it, but it's the way that you exhibit it. Sorrow, for example. You have a story about this, and maybe share that story. But what I would say is it's okay to have sorrow or experience loss or sadness. Now, if you're making everybody miserable and you're running around like a bumbling idiot and you're undermining who you are as a father and you're not leading your family well, then I would say you're not exhibiting sorrow in a productive and healthy way. But if you're telling your kids, hey guys, I'm having a hard time with the loss of, excuse me, I'm having a hard time with the loss of grandma or grandpa or my brother or whoever. And so I'm down. And this is why it was so important to me. And here's some great memories I have of this person. And what are your great memories? And you can talk and you can laugh about stories. I remember I went to a funeral for my grandmother when she passed away. And at first I was a little insulted after the funeral because everybody was laughing and having fun. And I remember as a young man, I was insulted. I'm like, our grandma just died. You guys are here smiling and laughing and enjoying yourselves? And I realized, no, this is good. They're honoring her. They're remembering good memories. Grandma, even in her death, brought us back together as a family, and we're enjoying each other and reconnecting. It's just the way you frame things. So yeah, you can be sorrowful, you can have anger, you can be frustrated. Just say you're frustrated and then be a man about it and don't fly off the rails.
Yeah. Well, and some of that can serve them, right? I mean, this is how we've kind of failed, I think, sometimes as men, is by this motion, this idea that like we have to bottle up our emotions. Well, then what am I teaching my boy? Right? When he's faced with those emotions, he has nothing to model. He has no idea, right? And then he's left unto himself to try to figure it out. No, like,
yeah,
model it and model it well, right? Show some emotion. You can be expressive of the emotion. Now, don't let it dictate negative action on your part, and show them how it's done. And you can't do that without the expression of the emotion. You can't model how to deal with it. So, yeah, good stuff. So I think the key thing, man, Iron Council, open for enrollment. We talked about, one of the questions was, obviously, what are the traits of generating an inner circle? Nothing kind of does that a little bit better than banding yourself with like-minded men that are about making a difference, right? That are about something better than themselves, that are all committed to being better fathers, better husbands. I mean, that's literally the blueprint of the member of the Iron Council, which is unfortunately maybe a little bit too rare in society today. So to join us, we're open for enrollment until the end of the month. That's orderofman.com/Iron Council to learn more and sign up.
That's right. I hope to see you guys in there. Again, you said we're open till the end of the month. So guys, get on it. And the thing about it too, and I don't really talk about this a whole lot, but it doesn't happen a whole lot. If you decide to join us and you're like, okay, let's get a little peek under the hood and see what this is all about, and you decide, hey, this is not for me, just message me back and I'll give you your money back. I'm not worried about that. Like, really what we want to do is we want to serve you guys. Or if you decide, hey, I'm going through a rough point in my life and I just need some help for the next 30 to 60 days, cool. Join us for a month or two. Yeah. And then if you feel like you're ready to get out, what I have found is guys will come in, maybe they're dealing with a divorce or separation. Maybe it's a loss of a loved one. Maybe they're just struggling at work, or they're dealing with some medical issues, or want to lose some weight. Is these guys will come in and gain a lot of value from it, and then realize that there's so much more value than they initially thought, that they stay for different reasons. So they might get back on the path for their fitness, for example, but they stay because now they have a friend who is more of a business advisor or accountability in other facets of their lives. So I find that few people do leave once they join like that, but the option is on the table. So don't feel like there's some great risk and that you're locked in forever. I don't play games with people's resources, money included. So if you decide time as well, if you decide it's not worth your money or time, just tell me and I'll give you your money back and wish you well. And you can keep listening to the podcast for free or the Facebook group. That's just fine. So anyways, guys, check it out. Orderofman.com/Iron Council.
Do we have any preview calls scheduled?
We do have preview calls. I will tell you the dates. Hold on one second. I just sent a text. So let me see here.
And as you pull that up, Brian, so also stay connected. You can join us, orderofman.com, sign up for a newsletter, and then follow Mr. Michler on the socials as well, at Ryan Michler, both X and Instagram.
The preview calls are this Thursday, the 26th. So that'll be tomorrow, the 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then June 30th, Monday, June 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you go to theironcouncil.com/preview, theironcouncil.com/preview, you can get signed up for that. Perfect. Kipp, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks, man. Enjoy your trip in Hawaii. Live it up there. And guys, great questions today. Hopefully, as we always do, we try to give you good answers, and hopefully we did. So we'll catch you all on Friday for our Friday Field Notes. Until then, go out there, take action, and become a man you are meant to be.